The moment I saw my name tag at my son's wedding reception, I knew exactly what Mia Turner thought of me. Janet White, the charity case. Her wealthy family erupted in laughter as I stared at those cruel words written in her perfect calligraphy. I smiled politely, placed the tag on my navy blue dress that suddenly felt shabby next to their designer gowns, and quietly excused myself to make one phone call. By morning, they'd discover what real charity looks like. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My story might seem unbelievable, but sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, especially when it comes to family. Let me tell you how we got here, because this story starts 6 months before that humiliating Saturday evening in June. My son Noah had fallen head over heels for Mia Turner, a beautiful 29-year-old African-American woman from old Connecticut money, the kind of money that builds wings on museums and names libraries after dead relatives. When Noah first brought her home to my modest apartment, I could see the disdain in her perfectly sculpted features as she surveyed my living room with its worn furniture and family photos in drugstore frames. "How quaint," she'd said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "It's so refreshing to see someone who isn't obsessed with material things." Even then, I bit my tongue. My boy was happy, and at 42 he deserved love if only he could have seen past her beauty to the coldness underneath. But love, as I've learned in my 68 years, makes fools of the wisest men. What Noah didn't know, what none of them knew, was that beneath my facade of modest means lay a secret I'd kept for 3 years. When my husband Marcus died, he left me more than memories. He left me an empire. Marcus White had built White Investments from nothing into one of the most powerful financial institutions on the East Coast. Everyone assumed I would sell when he passed. What would a 65-year-old widow know about running a multi-billion-dollar corporation? That assumption worked perfectly for me. "Mom, are you sure you're comfortable?" Noah had asked after Marcus's funeral, concerned about my decision to move from our mansion to a modest apartment. "I could help with the mortgage on your house." I'd patted his hand. "This is what I want, sweetheart. Simpler living, less to worry about." What I didn't tell him was that I was worth $12 billion, that I controlled majority stakes in 17 major corporations, that the modest Janet White, who shopped at discount stores and drove a 10-year-old Honda, was actually one of the most powerful women in American finance. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, pulling me from my thoughts. Robert Hayes, my attorney for over 15 years, and one of the few people who knew my secret. "The Turner Holdings report is ready, Janet," he said when I answered. "You were right. They're leveraged to the hilt. One wrong move and the whole house of cards collapses." I thanked him and hung up, staring at the small potted plant Mia had brought as a housewarming gift when Noah first introduced us, a cactus. "Low maintenance," she'd explained with that condescending smile. "Perfect for someone your age who might forget to water things." Low maintenance, like I was a burden to be managed. If only she knew that while she was planning charity galas with her mother's friends, I was overseeing a financial portfolio that could buy and sell her family's old money 100 times over. But patience had always been my strength. Marcus taught me that during our 40 years of marriage. "The market rewards the patient investor. Janet," he'd say, "let others rush, we'll wait and watch." So I watched and waited as Noah's relationship with Mia blossomed. I observed how her family slowly pulled him into their orbit, away from me. How holiday plans suddenly revolved around the Turner family estate. How my calls increasingly went to voicemail. The engagement party was my first real taste of what I was up against, held at the Turner family estate in Greenwich. It was a showcase of wealth that made even me, who had seen the truly wealthy up close, raise an eyebrow. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted by artists whose names I recognized from museum placards. The guest list read like a social register, filled with people whose conversations centered on yacht clubs and charity galas I'd never be invited to attend. Not that I couldn't afford membership, I owned shares in 3 of the most exclusive clubs on the East Coast. But Janet White, the modest widow from Ohio, wouldn't belong in such circles. Mia's mother, Elizabeth Turner, had introduced me to her friends, her tone suggesting I was something unfortunate that had attached itself to her daughter's happiness. "She's from Ohio," she'd said, as if explaining an exotic disease. The way she said it made Ohio sound like a third-world country. But I played my part. I smiled, complimented the hors d'oeuvres, and pretended not to notice how conversations died when I approached. After all, I had my reasons for staying quiet. Some games require patience, and I've always been very, very patient. William Turner, Mia's father, barely acknowledged my existence. I later learned from Robert that William worked as an executive at Meridian Financial, a company I had acquired through a shell corporation just 2 months after Marcus died. William's job, his family's social standing, their very lifestyle, all of it rested on foundations he didn't realize I controlled. That night, as I drove home from the engagement party in my modest Honda, I called Robert. "Begin phase 1 of the Turner portfolio evaluation," I said. "I want to know everything, every loan, every investment, every credit line." "Are you sure, Janet?" Robert asked carefully. "This feels personal." I watched the lights of Greenwich fade in my rearview mirror. It became personal when they made my son ashamed of where he came from. The wedding planning process revealed just how deep the Turner family's contempt ran. Every decision was made without consulting me, despite my repeated offers to help. When I suggested contributing to the rehearsal dinner, Elizabeth Turner had actually laughed out loud. "Oh, Janet, how sweet," she'd cooed. "But we simply couldn't allow you to strain your limited resources. This is going to be quite expensive. You understand. Limited resources. If only she knew." But I kept playing the role of the struggling widow, the woman who cleaned houses and took odd jobs to make ends meet. It wasn't entirely false I had done those things. Just not recently. Not for the past 3 years since Marcus passed and left me his little empire. But the Turners didn't need to know that. Not yet. Noah tried to include me. Bless his heart. He'd call with updates about venue bookings and menu tastings, always apologizing for another event I somehow wasn't invited to. "Mom, I'm sure it was just an oversight," he'd say when I mentioned missing the cake testing or the flower selection meeting. "Mia's been so stressed with all the planning." Stressed, yes. I imagine coordinating a $200,000 wedding while simultaneously planning ways to exclude your future mother-in-law would be exhausting work. The bridal shower was particularly enlightening. I wasn't invited, of course, but Noah insisted Mia reconsider. It would mean so much to Mom, he'd pleaded. So she extended a last-minute invitation, the kind that makes it clear you're only welcome because someone forced the issue. I arrived at the country club bearing a modest gift, a simple crystal vase from Macy's. Nothing too expensive for someone in my supposed financial situation. The other gifts were works of art, Hermes scarves, Tiffany jewelry, silk lingerie that cost more than most people's rent. When Mia opened my gift, she held it up with the same expression you'd use for roadkill. "How practical," she announced to the room. "Every bride needs something from the discount store." The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was the sound wealthy people make when they encounter something beneath their notice. But I just smiled and sipped my champagne, making mental notes about each woman's face, each cruel chuckle. Information, I've learned, is far more valuable than pride. That night, I added another name to my research list. Melissa Fairchild, Elizabeth Turner's closest friend, who had laughed the loudest at my gift. Robert's report came back the next day. Her husband's investment firm had borrowed heavily from Sterling Capital, another company in my portfolio. "Shall I adjust their interest rates?" Robert asked. "Not yet," I replied. "Just make a note. I was building a map of connections, a web of financial relationships that would prove useful when the time came. The patient spider waits for the perfect moment to strike." As the wedding day approached, Noah became increasingly distant. Caught between his love for me and his new family's expectations, he was struggling to balance worlds that seemed impossibly far apart. "Mom, would you mind not wearing that blue dress to the rehearsal dinner?" he asked during one of his rare visits to my apartment. Mia thought maybe something more formal. The dress he referred to was one I'd worn to his college graduation. Not designer, certainly, but perfectly respectable. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the shame that he felt ashamed. "Of course, sweetheart," I said gently. "I'll find something more appropriate." I didn't tell him that I could buy the entire boutique where Mia shopped without making a dent in my daily interest earnings. Instead, I went to Nordstrom Rack and bought a modest navy blue dress that would blend in without drawing attention. Sometimes the best revenge starts with being underestimated. The wedding day dawned perfect. Cloudless sky, gentle breeze, the kind of weather that photographers dream about. The Turner estate had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, with white roses climbing trellises and string quartets positioned throughout the gardens. It was beautiful. I'll give them that. Money, whatever its source, can certainly buy beauty. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, the navy blue dress from Nordstrom Rack. Simple but elegant. Nothing that would upstage the bride or draw unwanted attention. I wanted to blend in, to be forgettable. Noah greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek before being whisked away by William for groom photos. Elizabeth nodded stiffly in my direction, but didn't approach. I was a ghost at my own son's wedding, visible, but not quite present. During the ceremony, I watched Noah's face as Mia walked down the aisle in her $15,000 Vera Wang gown. For a moment, I almost forgot my purpose, almost let myself believe that maybe I'd misjudged her, that love might soften her sharp edges. Then she caught my eye during the ring exchange and gave me a look that could freeze champagne. The reception was where everything unraveled. I'd found my table, number 12 naturally, tucked away near the kitchen doors with Noah's college roommates and their wives. Not with family. Family was at table 1, where the Turners held court like royalty receiving subjects. But I didn't mind. Better positioning for what was coming. That's when I saw it. The name tags at each place setting, written in Mia's perfect calligraphy. Most were simple Elizabeth Turner, William Turner, Noah White, but mine read Janet White, the charity case. The breath caught in my throat. Not from hurt I'd expected cruelty, but from the sheer audacity of it. She'd actually put it in writing. This woman who would soon discover that charity is a two-way street. "Oh my goodness," Elizabeth gasped as she noticed my tag, her hand flying to her throat in mock horror. "Mia, darling, surely this is some kind of mistake." But Mia's smile was razor sharp. "No mistake at all. I thought honesty was important in family relationships." Her eyes met mine across the table. "Don't you agree? Janet, after all, we wouldn't want anyone to get ideas above their station." The laughter started with William, a booming sound that encouraged others to join in. Soon half the table was chuckling at the clever wordplay, at the delicious cruelty of publicly humiliating the groom's mother at her own son's wedding. I stood up slowly, placed the name tag carefully on my purse, and smiled. "You're absolutely right. Mia, honesty is very important in family relationships. I think it's time for some honesty all around." Then I walked away. I found a quiet corner in the Turner Estate Library, surrounded by leather-bound books that probably cost more per volume than most people's car payments. The irony wasn't lost on me. Making the call that would change everything while surrounded by the symbols of their supposed superiority. My fingers didn't shake as I dialed. They should have, considering what I was about to set in motion, but I've never been one for dramatics, just cold, calculated action when the situation demands it. "Robert, it's Janet. I know it's Saturday evening, but I need you to execute the Turner portfolio adjustments we discussed. All of them. Tonight." Robert Hayes has been my attorney for 15 years, since before Marcus died and left me his business empire. He's also one of the few people who knows exactly how much that empire is worth. When he cleared his throat on the other end of the line, I could hear the concern in his voice. "Janet, are you certain once we pull those investments, there's no going back? The ripple effects will be significant." "I'm very certain." I watched through the library window as wedding guests mingled on the terrace, champagne glasses catching the evening light like tiny suns. "And Robert, activate the accelerated payment clauses on the Turner Holdings loans. All of them." A long pause. "That will trigger immediate default proceedings. William Turner won't have 72 hours to respond. 48 hours should be sufficient." I thought about Mia's name tag, about the laughter, about 3 years of careful planning leading to this moment. After all, we wouldn't want to be unreasonable. And if they try to negotiate, I fingered the name tag in my purse, tracing the words charity case with my fingertip. "Tell them the charity case sends her regards." After ending the call, I slipped back to the reception long enough to kiss Noah goodbye and congratulate the happy couple. Mia was radiant in her triumph, accepting compliments on her cleverness with false modesty that made my teeth ache. She had no idea she'd just triggered her own financial apocalypse. "Leaving so early?" she asked as I approached the head table. "But we haven't even cut the cake yet." "I'm sure you'll manage without me," I replied sweetly. "After all, you're so good at making do with less." Her laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Oh, Janet, you're so funny. I do hope we can maintain this understanding between us." Understanding. Yes, we definitely had an understanding now. She understood that she could humiliate me publicly and face no consequences. I understood exactly who she was beneath the beautiful surface. What she didn't understand yet was who I was beneath mine. The next morning, I sat on my small apartment balcony with coffee and waited. By my calculations, William Turner would receive the first notification around 8 a.m. The banks don't waste time when billions are at stake. Even on Sundays, people always assume that money talks. But in my experience, it whispers. The real power lies in knowing which whispers to listen to and which ones to ignore. Marcus taught me that during our 35 years of marriage, as he built his investment company from a one-room office into a financial empire that touched every major market on the East Coast. When he died 3 years ago, everyone expected me to sell. A widow in her 60s, they assumed, would want to simplify her life, maybe buy a nice condo in Florida and live off the interest. They didn't expect me to step into Marcus's shoes and discover I had a natural talent for seeing the weak spots in other people's financial armor. The Turner family had been particularly easy to research. Old money, they called themselves. But like many old money families, their wealth was more reputation than reality. The family business, Turner Holdings, survived on leveraged investments and carefully managed debt. Remove the right pieces from their financial Jenga tower, and the whole structure would collapse. What made it delicious was how easy they'd made it. William Turner worked for Meridian Financial, one of the companies in my portfolio. He had no idea that the little old lady his daughter-in-law loved to mock actually controlled his paycheck. Elizabeth Turner's charity boards all depended on grants from the White Foundation, Marcus's final gift to me, disguised under a name so common they'd never made the connection. Even their house, that magnificent estate where they'd held the wedding, was mortgaged through a Turner Holdings credit line, a credit line that, as of 8:00 a.m. this morning, would be in default. My phone buzzed at 8:17 a.m. "Noah?" "Mom, I just got the strangest call from Mia. She's crying about some kind of financial emergency. Her dad got calls from lawyers this morning, something about investments and loan defaults. Do you know anything about this?" I sipped my coffee, watching a cardinal build its nest in the oak tree outside my window. How would I know anything about their financial affairs? "Sweetheart, I'm just the charity case. Remember?" "Mom, please, this isn't the time for jokes. Mia's really upset. She's saying her family might lose everything. That doesn't seem possible. They're loaded." "Are they?" I asked gently. "Or do they just spend like they are? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means, Noah, that sometimes what appears to be wealth is actually just very expensive debt. And sometimes the people you think are powerless turn out to be holding all the cards." A long silence on the other end. "Mom, what did you do?" I smiled, thinking about Mia's name tag tucked safely in my purse. "I made a phone call. By noon Sunday, my quiet apartment had become mission control for watching the Turner family's world crumble. I'd spent years learning to read financial reports the way some people read mystery novels, and the Turner Holdings portfolio was a page-turner. Robert called with updates every hour. "The morning was just the beginning," he reported during his third call. "Meridian Financial is reviewing all employees with potential conflicts of interest. William Turner's position is precarious. And the House, foreclosure proceedings will begin Tuesday unless they can produce $3 million by end of business tomorrow. Given their current liquidity crisis, that seems unlikely." I'd done my homework thoroughly over the past 6 months, while playing the role of humble mother-in-law. I'd quietly acquired controlling interests in everything the Turner family depended on. Not directly. Of course, that would have been traceable through shell companies, investment partnerships, and carefully structured trusts that would have taken a forensic accountant months to unravel. The beauty was in the timing. Wedding expenses had already stretched their credit lines to the breaking point. The $200,000 ceremony that was meant to display their wealth had actually been funded by borrowed money they couldn't afford to borrow. All I'd done was call in those loans simultaneously, like pulling multiple foundation blocks from a house of cards. My phone rang again. Noah, sounding increasingly desperate. Mom, Mia's parents are freaking out. They're talking about selling the house, firing their staff, canceling the country club memberships. Her dad might lose his job. What kind of phone call could possibly cause all this? The kind that happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness, I said. When they forget that quiet people often have the loudest voices when they choose to use them. This is about the name tag, isn't it, Mom? I saw it. I confronted Mia about it last night. She said it was just a joke. A joke? I repeated the word slowly, tasting its bitterness. Yes, I imagine she did think it was funny, right up until this morning. Can't you undo whatever you did? Mia's beside herself. She's talking about how this will ruin their reputation, how they'll never recover from the shame. Shame. Now there was an interesting word choice. And what about my shame? Noah, what about the shame of being publicly humiliated at my own son's wedding by a woman who's never worked a day in her life? She was wrong. I know that. But destroying her family seems extreme. I stood up, pacing to my small kitchen, where Marcus's picture still sat on the counter. He taught me many things, but the most important lesson was this: respect is not given, it's earned, and sometimes it has to be taken. I haven't destroyed anything, Noah. I've simply revealed what was already there, a house built on borrowed time and borrowed money. The Turner family's wealth was always an illusion. I just decided to stop pretending it was real. So what happens now? I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window, seeing not the charity case Mia thought she'd humiliated, but the woman I'd always been underneath Marcus's partner in every sense, his equal in business and in life. Now we see whether your wife is interested in learning about actual charity, because if she wants her family situation to improve, she's going to need some help. And as she so eloquently pointed out yesterday, I'm apparently in the charity business. Monday morning brought what I'd been waiting for, a phone call from Mia herself. Her voice was different now, stripped of its usual arrogance and replaced with something I'd never heard from her before: desperation. Janet, I need to speak with you. Could we meet for coffee? Of course, dear, I said sweetly. I always have time for family, even family who thinks I'm a charity case. The silence on the other end was telling. About that, she began, but I cut her off. Let's meet at Marlowe's Diner on 5th Street, 100. I assume you know where it is. It's not exactly your usual scene, but I'm sure you'll manage. Marlowe's was perfect for what I had planned: a working-class diner where a woman in designer clothes would stand out like a peacock in a chicken coop. When Mia arrived at exactly 100, she was almost unrecognizable. Gone was the perfectly styled hair and flawless makeup. She looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the cracked vinyl booth across from me. Her hands shook as she picked up the laminated menu. I don't know what to order. I've never eaten at a place like this. The meatloaf special is excellent, I suggested. Very affordable. I imagine that's important to you now. She flinched at the word affordable, but nodded. When the waitress came over, a tired-looking woman about my age named Dolores, Mia could barely make eye contact. Interesting how wealth affected confidence. So, I said after we'd ordered, what can I do for you? Mia? She took a shaky breath. My father's going to lose his job. We might lose the house. Everything's falling apart. And I don't understand how this happened so fast. These things rarely happen fast, dear. They build up over time, like water behind a dam. Eventually, something gives way, and it all comes crashing down at once. Can you help us? The words came out strangled, like they physically hurt to say. I stirred sugar into my coffee, taking my time. Help you? I'm just the charity case. Remember, what could someone like me possibly do for someone like you? I was wrong to write that. I was angry and stupid, and I took it out on you. I'm sorry. Sorry. It was a start, but hardly enough. What exactly are you asking me to do? Mia? I don't know. Noah said you made some kind of phone call, that you might have connections. If there's any way you could help us, I'll do anything. Anything. Such a dangerous word to use with someone you've underestimated. Well, I said thoughtfully, I might know some people. But charity isn't free. Dear? There are always conditions. Hope flickered in her eyes. What kind of conditions? I pulled out a folded piece of paper from my purse and slid it across the table. I've taken the liberty of drawing up a few simple requirements. Nothing too difficult for someone as resourceful as yourself. Mia's hands trembled as she read my list. I watched her face change with each line, confusion giving way to disbelief, then to something approaching horror. You want me to work as a cleaning lady for 6 months. Not just any cleaning lady, I corrected. You'll work for Sunshine Cleaning Service, the same company I worked for before Marcus died. Mrs. Patterson runs a good business. She'll teach you what honest work looks like. But I've never cleaned anything in my life. We've always had staff for that. Then you'll learn. Education is so important. Don't you think? I sipped my coffee, enjoying the way she was processing this reversal of fortune. The second condition is that you'll volunteer at the homeless shelter every Saturday for the next year, serving meals, cleaning toilets, whatever they need. A homeless shelter. Her voice was barely a whisper. The very same one your mother's charity board pretends to support, but has never actually visited. You'll get to meet the people you've been helping from a distance all these years. She kept reading, her face growing paler with each requirement. You want me to live in your apartment building in a studio unit. Just until you can afford something better on your cleaning lady salary. It's a nice building. I live there myself. Remember, though I suppose you'll be seeing quite a bit more of it than you expected. The meatloaf special arrived, giving Mia a moment to compose herself. She pushed the food around her plate without eating, clearly struggling to process what was happening to her world. And if I agree to all this, she asked finally, you'll help my family. I'll make some phone calls, see what can be done about those pesky loan defaults, maybe even put in a good word for your father at his company. I paused, watching her carefully. Though I should mention, I have some influence at Meridian Financial, more than you might expect from a charity case. Something flickered in her eyes, the first hint that she was beginning to suspect there was more to me than she'd assumed. What kind of influence? I smiled mysteriously. The kind that comes from knowing the right people. Your father works in the acquisitions department, doesn't he? Handles major corporate buyouts? Yes, but I don't see what that has to do with... Oh, I think you'll find it has everything to do with your current situation. You see, Mia, companies like Meridian don't just lose money overnight unless someone very powerful decides they should. The fork slipped from her fingers, clattering against her plate. What are you saying? I'm saying that perhaps you should have asked more questions about your new mother-in-law before deciding to humiliate her at a public event. Background research is so important in business relationships. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Who are you? I'm exactly who I've always been. The woman who raised your husband to be a good man. The woman who's watched you treat him like an accessory to your social status. The woman who's about to give you a choice that will determine your family's future. I reached across the table and tapped my list of conditions. You have 24 hours to decide. Accept my terms, and I'll consider helping your family. Refuse, and by Friday, you'll be learning exactly what real charity looks like when you're on the receiving end. Tuesday evening brought an unexpected visitor to my small apartment. William Turner stood in my doorway, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in 3 days. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, wrinkled shirt, unshaven face. The hollow look of someone who'd discovered his entire world was built on quicksand. Mrs. White, I hope you don't mind me coming by unannounced. I got your address from Noah. Not at all. Mr. Turner, please come in. I stepped aside, watching as he took in my modest living space. The same eyes that had looked through me at his daughter's engagement party now catalogued every detail with desperate attention. Can I offer you coffee? I'm afraid I don't have the expensive brands you're accustomed to. Coffee would be fine. He settled heavily into my small dining chair, looking completely out of place among my thrift store furniture and discount store decorations. While I prepared the coffee, he cleared his throat several times, obviously struggling with how to begin. Finally, as I set his cup down, he spoke. "I know what you did." "Do you?" I sat across from him, genuinely curious. "What exactly do you think I did? You orchestrated everything. The loan defaults, the investment withdrawals, even my position at Meridian being under review. Someone with serious financial power decided to destroy my family. And the timing suggests it was you." I had to admire his directness. Desperation had stripped away his social pretenses, leaving behind a more honest version of himself. "That's quite an accusation. William, what makes you think someone like me would have that kind of power?" "Because I spent all night going through the corporate structures of the companies that pulled their support. Shell companies, investment partnerships, holding trusts, all very sophisticated financial instruments, and all leading back to one source of funding, which is the White Foundation." I raised an eyebrow, impressed despite myself. "The White Foundation," he continued, "founded by Marcus White, the same Marcus White who built Meridian Financial from nothing and sold it to Turner Holdings' parent company 15 years ago." The silence stretched between us as I sipped my coffee. So he'd finally done his homework. Better late than never, I suppose. "Marcus White," I said slowly, "was my husband." William's face went white. You're Dorothy White, the Dorothy White. Marcus's widow who inherited everything." "Yes." I set down my cup with deliberate care. "Including controlling interest in the parent company that owns Turner Holdings, including the investment firm that handles your family's portfolio, including, as of last year, 60% ownership in Meridian Financial itself." The coffee cup slipped from his hands, shattering against my linoleum floor. "You've been playing us from the beginning. Playing you know, William. I've been watching you, testing you, seeing what kind of people my son was marrying into." I stood up, getting paper towels to clean up the spilled coffee. The results were illuminating. The engagement party, the wedding planning, all those times you seemed so meek and accommodating. I was gathering information, learning about your family's character, your true financial situation, your values. I knelt to clean up the broken ceramic. "Do you know what I discovered?" He shook his head, apparently beyond words. "I discovered that your daughter wrote charity case on my name tag at her own wedding, that your wife introduced me to her friends as something embarrassing she had to tolerate, that your entire family found it amusing to mock a woman they believed was powerless." I stood up, disposing of the broken pieces in my small trash can. "But most interesting of all, I discovered that none of you ever asked who I really was. You saw what you expected to see and never looked deeper. What do you want from us?" His voice was barely above a whisper. For the first time in our conversation, I smiled. "I want you to understand what charity really means, William. It means helping someone who can't help themselves. Someone powerless who needs assistance from someone with power." I walked to my purse and pulled out Mia's copy of my conditions list. "Your daughter has until tomorrow to give me her answer. I suggest you encourage her to choose wisely." The next afternoon, Mia arrived at my apartment with Noah in tow. My son looked confused and hurt, the expression of a man who was finally realizing his mother wasn't who he'd thought she was, and neither was his wife. "Mom," he said as they settled on my small couch, "Mia told me about your conditions. This is crazy. You can't seriously expect her to work as a cleaning lady." "Why not? It's honest work. I did it myself for 2 years after your father died, before I fully understood what he'd left me." Mia had been staring at her hands, but now she looked up. "You really cleaned houses. Every day. Scrubbed toilets, mopped floors, dusted furniture for people who treated me like I was invisible. It was humbling work, but it taught me something valuable about character." "What's that?" Noah asked. "It taught me that how you treat people you think are beneath you reveals everything about who you really are." I looked directly at Mia. "Your mother-in-law, the charity case, has been cleaning up other people's messes her whole life. The only difference now is that she has the power to choose whose messes she's willing to clean up." Mia's voice was barely audible. "I accept your conditions." Noah started to protest, but she held up her hand. No, Noah, she's right. I've been terrible to your mother, and I need to make it right. If working as a cleaning lady and volunteering at a homeless shelter is what it takes, then that's what I'll do. And the apartment, I asked, leaving your comfortable life to see how the other half lives. I'll do it all. Tears were streaming down her face now. I was wrong about everything. I thought money made me better than other people. But I was just hiding behind my parents' wealth. When it was gone, I realized I don't know how to do anything useful. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception, but saw only genuine remorse and fear. This isn't a punishment. Mia, it's an education. You're going to learn skills that money can't buy: empathy, humility, the satisfaction of honest work. And you'll really help my family if I do this. I'll do more than help them. I'll restore everything they've lost, and more. Your father will keep his job at Meridian. In fact, he'll receive a promotion. Your parents' house will be saved. The family reputation will be rebuilt stronger than before. Noah looked stunned. How can you promise all that? I walked to my small desk and pulled out a folder I'd been saving for this moment. Because I own the companies involved. All of them. Your mother-in-law isn't just wealthy. Noah, she's one of the most powerful women in American finance. Marcus built an empire. And when he died, he left it all to me. I spread the documents across my coffee table: corporate ownership papers, bank statements, investment portfolios. The numbers were staggering enough to make Noah sink back into his chair. The White Foundation controls over $12 billion in assets. I have majority stakes in 17 major corporations, including Meridian Financial, Turner Holdings' parent company, and most of the banks that were threatening foreclosure. Mia was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You could have stopped all this any time. Of course I could have. But then, how would you have learned what really matters in life? This was all a test. I nodded. The most important test you'll ever take, and you failed it spectacularly when you wrote charity case on my name tag. But failure doesn't have to be final. Mia, sometimes it's just the beginning of real education. Noah was shaking his head in amazement. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me about any of this? Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I own. Money changes people. Noah, it makes them see dollar signs instead of human hearts. I needed to know that my family loved Janet the person, not Janet the billionaire. I looked at both of them sitting on my discount furniture in my modest apartment. Now you understand why I live simply, why I choose to drive a 10-year-old car and shop at discount stores. Real wealth isn't about what you spend. It's about having the power to help people and the wisdom to know when they deserve it. As they prepared to leave, Noah pulled me aside while Mia waited in the hallway. Did you plan this all along? From the moment I introduced you to Mia, I touched his cheek gently. No, sweetheart. I hoped she would be different. I wanted to believe she could see your heart the way I do. But the moment I saw her look around my apartment that first day, I knew we might have a problem. I should have noticed. I should have stood up for you. You were in love. Love has a way of blinding us to what's right in front of our eyes. He hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, Mom. Don't be sorry. Be better. And help Mia be better too. She has potential. She just needs to discover it. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, turning Mia's name tag over and over in my hands. The cruel word stared back at me. Janet White, the charity case. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far, if my revenge had crossed a line from justice into cruelty. But then I remembered Elizabeth Turner's condescending smile, William's dismissive glances, Mia's open contempt, the laughter around the wedding table. No, this wasn't about revenge. It was about education. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most painful experiences. Mia would learn what real dignity looked like, what true charity meant, and my son would finally see his wife for who she truly was and who she could become. I placed the name tag in my desk drawer and closed it firmly. Phase 1 was complete. Now the real work would begin. The morning after the wedding, I woke before dawn. Old habits die hard. Marcus and I had always been early risers, believing the most important decisions happened while others were still sleeping. I made my coffee and settled on the small balcony of my apartment, watching the first hints of sunlight break over the horizon. My phone sat silent beside me. It wouldn't ring until precisely 8:17 a.m., when the first notifications of financial irregularities would trigger emergency protocols at Turner Holdings. Banking systems, for all their complexity, are remarkably predictable. I opened my laptop and logged into the secure server Robert had set up for me. The dashboard displayed a complex web of financial connections, a digital map of the Turner family's entire economic universe. Every investment, every loan, every line of credit, all of it hanging by threads I controlled. This wasn't a decision I'd made lightly or quickly. From the moment Noah introduced me to Mia 6 months ago, I'd seen the warning signs: her barely concealed disdain, Elizabeth's condescending pity, William's dismissive glances, but I'd held back, hoping that time might soften their edges, that they might see beyond my modest facade to the person beneath. The name tag had simply been the final confirmation of what I already knew. The Turners saw the world as divided between people who mattered and people who didn't, and they had firmly placed me in the latter category. At exactly 8:02 a.m., the first red indicator flashed on my screen. Meridian Financial's automated system had flagged Turner Holdings' line of credit for immediate review. By 8:05, 3 more indicators turned red as investment firms began pulling support. At 8:11, the automated notifications would be routed to human attention, and at 8:15, the first calls would be made. The digital cascade was beautiful in its efficiency, like watching dominoes fall in perfect sequence. My phone rang at 8:17, right on schedule. Noah's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, are you awake?" His voice had the brittle quality of someone trying very hard to sound calm. "Of course, sweetheart. I've been up for hours. Is everything all right? You and Mia should be headed to the airport for your honeymoon." That's not happening right now. Something's wrong with Mia's family's finances. Her dad's been getting calls since early this morning. Emergency meetings. Something about loan recalls and investment withdrawals. They're saying the house might be at risk. I took a slow sip of my coffee. That sounds serious. What happened? Nobody knows. William, Mia's dad, he keeps saying it doesn't make sense. That everything was stable yesterday. That someone must be targeting them specifically. "And why are you calling me about this? Surely there's nothing I can do to help." A pause. "Mia thought..." "She wondered if you might know someone who could help. A financial advisor or someone with banking connections." I almost laughed out loud. 24 hours ago, I hadn't been important enough to be seated at the family table. Now they thought I might have useful connections. "I'm just a simple widow from Ohio. Noah. What would I know about high finance?" "Mom, please. Mia is really upset." I imagine she is. I watched a cardinal land on the railing of my balcony, its bright red feathers stark against the pale morning sky. How upset was she when she wrote charity case on my name tag? Silence. Then, "You saw that." Everyone saw it. Noah. That was rather the point. Wasn't it public humiliation tends to have an audience? She said it was just a joke. Mom. In poor taste. Sure. But some jokes reveal more truth than the person telling them intends. I set my coffee cup down with deliberate care. "Tell Mia I'll meet her at Marlowe's diner at 1 o'clock. Just her, not her parents. If she wants my help, she can ask for it directly. Marlowe's that greasy spoon on 5th, why not someplace nicer? Because Marlowe's is where I can afford..." "Noah, I'm just a charity case. Remember?" I hung up before he could respond, turning my attention back to the financial dashboard. The digital dominoes continued to fall. By noon, William Turner would be summoned to an emergency meeting with the board of Meridian Financial. By 3, the family would receive formal notice of foreclosure proceedings on their estate. By tomorrow morning, their entire financial facade would crumble. Unless, of course, someone intervened. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. "Phase 1 complete. Turner Holdings credit freeze in effect. Awaiting your instructions for Phase 2. I typed back, "Proceed as planned. No exceptions." Throughout the morning, I watched through my digital window as the Turner family's world imploded. Their stock portfolio lost 37% of its value in targeted sell-offs. Their primary bank froze their assets pending an investigation into irregular activities. Meridian Financial placed William on administrative leave while they reviewed his position. It wasn't personal, not for the banks or the investment firms or the credit agencies. For them, it was simply business. Numbers on a spreadsheet. Risk assessments and liability calculations. They had no idea they were all moving in concert, puppets dancing on strings I controlled. At 12:30, I left my apartment and walked the 6 blocks to Marlowe's Diner. The place was a neighborhood institution, faded vinyl booths, laminated menus, and the best meatloaf in the city. I'd eaten there often with Marcus when we were first married, long before his business took off. He had loved their apple pie. I chose a booth in the back, the worn vinyl squeaking beneath me as I slid in. Dolores, who had been waiting tables here since before I became a regular, brought me coffee without asking. The usual, Janet. She had no idea I could buy this entire building and everyone in it without blinking an eye. Just coffee for now. Dolores, I'm meeting someone. At precisely 1:00 p.m., Mia Turner walked through the door. Even in crisis, she couldn't help making an entrance. Though her designer clothes were wrinkled and her makeup hastily applied, she still drew every eye in the diner. But there was something different about her now, a brittleness, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. Her eyes darted around the dingy interior before settling on me. The confidence that had radiated from her at the wedding was gone, replaced by something approaching desperation. Janet, she slid into the booth across from me. Thank you for meeting me. Of course, I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch between us. The powerful understand the value of silence. It makes others rush to fill it, often revealing more than they intend. I don't know where to begin. Her voice trembled slightly. Perhaps with an apology that seems traditional when one has behaved badly. She flinched. You're right. I'm sorry about the name tag. It was childish and cruel. It was. I stirred my coffee slowly. But I suspect you're not here to make amends for social slights. Your family is in trouble, isn't it? Tears welled in her eyes. Everything's falling apart. Dad's job, the house, our accounts, it's all frozen or being called in. No one will explain why. It's like someone flipped a switch and turned everything off at once. How unfortunate. Mom thinks we're being targeted. Dad spent all night going through financial records, trying to figure out what happened. He says it's not random that someone with significant financial power is deliberately attacking us. I raised an eyebrow. And why would anyone do that? I don't know. The tears spilled over now. We haven't done anything to anyone. We're good people. Janet, are you... I set my cup down carefully. Good people who mock those they consider beneath them, who write charity case on a mother's name tag at her son's wedding, who exclude family members from celebrations because they don't fit the right social profile. She stared at me, realization slowly dawning in her eyes. It's you. You did this. Did what? Exactly. This financial attack. Somehow, you made this happen. I smiled for the first time. What makes you think I could possibly have that kind of power? I don't know. But the timing, right after the wedding. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Who are you? Really? I'm exactly who I've always been. Mia, Noah's mother, a widow, a woman who understands the value of respect and the cost of underestimating people. Dolores appeared at our table. Ready to order, ladies? Mia glanced at the menu, clearly flustered. I'll have whatever she's having. 2 meatloaf specials. Then, Dolores said, scribbling on her pad. Still the best in the city. Janet, your Marcus always said so. After she left, Mia stared at me. You're a regular here. They know you. I've been coming to Marlowe's for 40 years, long before Marcus became successful. We ate here twice a week because it was all we could afford. Some people forget where they came from when they achieve success. Others never forget. Marcus, your husband, was he? Marcus White founded White Investments. When he died, he left me controlling interest in 17 major corporations, including Meridian Financial, your father's employer, and the parent company of Turner Holdings. The blood drained from Mia's face. You're that Janet White, the widow of Marcus White. But that would mean you're worth approximately $12 billion, depending on the market. Yes. But you live in that small apartment. You shop at discount stores. You drive a Honda that's 10 years old. Money doesn't define who I am. Mia, it never has. Character does that. She sat back, the full weight of understanding finally hitting her. All this time, we thought you were... And you were actually... I was exactly who I presented myself to be, a mother who loved her son. The money was irrelevant, or it should have been. Dolores brought our food, the plate steaming with meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Mia stared at it like she'd never seen food before. "Why didn't you tell us?" she whispered when Dolores left. "Would it have mattered? Would you have treated me differently if you'd known I was wealthy? And if so, what does that say about you?" She had no answer for that. "What happens now?" she finally asked. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded document. "Now you have a choice." "What is this?" "A proposal. I can make all your family's problems disappear. The frozen accounts. The foreclosure notice. Your father's job, I can fix everything with a single phone call." Hope flickered in her eyes. "You would do that after how I treated you?" "I might, under certain conditions." "What conditions?" I slid the paper across the table. "Read it and decide if your family's financial future is worth the price." She unfolded the document, her eyes widening as she read each item. "You want me to work as a cleaning lady for 6 months. At Sunshine Cleaning Service. I worked there myself after Marcus died. It's honest work, and Mrs. Patterson is a fair employer. And volunteer at a homeless shelter every weekend. Move out of our house into a small apartment in your building." Her voice rose with each item. This is humiliation." "No, Mia, this is education. There's a difference." "You want to punish me." "I want to teach you. There's value in understanding how most of the world lives in working with your hands, in serving others without expectation of reward or recognition. These are lessons your privileged upbringing failed to provide." She pushed the food away, appetite forgotten. "And if I refuse, then I do nothing. I don't accelerate your family's financial collapse, but I don't prevent it either. Within a month, your parents will lose their house. Your father will lose his job. Your mother's social standing will evaporate. And you and Noah will be left to build a life without the safety net you've always taken for granted. That's blackmail. That's consequences. Mia, something you've rarely encountered in your life." She stared at the document, conflict visible on her face. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, weighing her pride against her family's survival. "How do I know you'll keep your word if I agree? Because unlike some people, I believe that integrity matters. When I make a promise, I keep it." She took a deep breath. "I need to think about this. To talk to Noah. You have 24 hours. I stood up, placing money on the table for the meal. "Call me when you've made your decision. But remember, financial systems move quickly. The longer you wait, the more damage occurs." As I walked toward the door, she called after me. "Why are you doing this? Is revenge really worth all this trouble?" I turned back, fixing her with a steady gaze. "This isn't about revenge, Mia. It's about growth. Someday, you might even thank me for it." The look of disbelief on her face almost made me smile. She still didn't understand. But she would. Eventually. By that evening, the Turner family was in full crisis mode. Robert kept me updated with hourly reports, each more dire than the last. William Turner had been placed on indefinite leave from Meridian Financial. The family's credit cards had been canceled. Their bank accounts remained frozen, pending an investigation that would discover nothing but would take weeks to complete. I sat in my modest living room, reviewing the latest financial reports on my laptop, when a knock came at my door. I wasn't expecting visitors. When I opened it, I found William Turner standing in my hallway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Mrs. White," he said, his voice hoarse. "I need to speak with you." I stepped aside to let him in, noting the wrinkled clothes, the unshaven face, the wild look in his eyes. How quickly power shifts when the foundation crumbles. "Would you like some tea, Mr. Turner?" I asked, as if this were a normal social call. No, thank you. He remained standing, too agitated to sit. I've spent the last 24 hours trying to understand what's happening to my family, to my company. And what have you discovered? He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Patterns, connections, all leading back to one source, which is the White Foundation. I nodded, impressed despite myself. William was smarter than I'd given him credit for. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, he continued. But then I dug deeper. Every company pulling their investments from Turner Holdings has connections to White Investments. Every bank freezing our accounts has ties to the White Foundation. Even Meridian Financial, where I've worked for 15 years, was originally founded by Marcus White. You've been doing your research. I had to. My family's future depends on it. He fixed me with a desperate stare. Are you Marcus White's widow? I smiled slightly. I am. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back, groping for the edge of my sofa to steady himself. But that would make you... You must be worth... Billions, yes. Quite a few of them. Actually, all this time, we thought you were... a cleaning lady. A struggling widow beneath your notice. I poured myself a cup of tea, my movements deliberately calm. Tell me, William, would you have treated me differently if you'd known who I really was? Would your wife have included me in the wedding planning? Would your daughter have thought twice before writing charity case on my name tag? He had the grace to look ashamed. I had no idea about the name tag. That was inexcusable. Yes, it was. But it was merely the culmination of 6 months of subtle humiliations. Wasn't it the dismissive glances, the condescending tones, the last-minute invitations to events where I was clearly unwelcome? We never meant, of course you meant it. You saw someone you believed had no value in your social circle, and you treated her accordingly. The only difference between you and most people is that you had the misfortune to misjudge someone with the power to respond. He sank onto my sofa, the full weight of understanding finally hitting him. You've orchestrated all of this. Our financial collapse, my suspension at work, the foreclosure notice. I merely accelerated processes that were already in motion. Your family's wealth was built on leveraged debt and social pretense. It would have collapsed eventually. I simply chose the timing. Why go to all this trouble? I sat across from him, studying his face, because I wanted to know what kind of family my son was marrying into. And now I do. What do you want from us? Money and apology. What I want, William, is for your daughter to learn the value of humility, of honest work, of treating people with dignity regardless of their perceived status or wealth. And how is she supposed to learn that? I handed him a copy of the same document I'd given Mia. By experiencing it firsthand. He read it quickly, his face growing paler with each line. This is humiliation. No, it's education. There's a significant difference. You expect my daughter, a Turner, to clean houses and work in a homeless shelter, to live in some tiny apartment. I expect her to learn what character looks like when the trappings of wealth are stripped away, to discover who she really is when she can't hide behind her family name or her father's credit cards. He stood up, anger replacing shock. This is revenge, plain and simple. Call it what you like, but consider your alternatives carefully. I can restore everything your family has lost with a single phone call, or I can let events take their natural course. You're blackmailing us. I'm offering a choice. That's more than your daughter gave me when she decided to humiliate me publicly. He paced my small living room, running calculations in his head. I could almost see the moment when pragmatism overcame pride. And if Mia agrees to these conditions, you'll fix everything: the accounts, the foreclosure, my job. Everything will return to normal. In fact, you might find your position at Meridian Financial improved. I believe there's an opening for Senior Vice President of Acquisitions coming available. He stopped pacing, staring at me with new understanding. You really do control everything, don't you? I smiled. Not everything, William. Just enough. I'll talk to Mia, try to make her understand what's at stake. She has until tomorrow to decide. After that, the damage becomes more difficult to undo. As he reached the door, he turned back. You know, I almost admire what you've done. The planning, the execution. It's masterful. I learned from the best. Marcus didn't build his empire by being foolish about people's character. No, I suppose he didn't. William looked at me with something approaching respect for the first time. For what it's worth, I am sorry about how we treated you. Not because of who you turned out to be, but because no one deserves that kind of disrespect. That, William, is the first sensible thing you've said since we met. After he left, I called Robert. Phase 2 is in motion. Be prepared for either outcome. Do you think she'll agree? He asked. I thought about the fear in Mia's eyes at the diner, the desperation in William's voice. She will. Pride is powerful, but self-preservation is stronger. The next morning, Mia called to accept my terms. Her voice was tight with controlled emotion, but she agreed to every condition without argument. I suspected William had been very persuasive about the family's alternatives. When do I start? She asked. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. at Sunshine Cleaning. Mrs. Patterson is expecting you. Pack only what you need for the apartment clothes, toiletries, personal items, no luxury goods, no electronics except a basic phone. I've arranged for the apartment to be furnished with necessities. This feels like punishment. Think of it as an opportunity. Mia, 6 months from now, you'll be a different person. Whether that's better or worse is entirely up to you. That evening, Noah came to see me alone. He'd been caught in the middle of this situation, torn between loyalty to his new wife and confusion about his mother's unexpected power. Is this really necessary, Mom? He asked after I'd explained everything. Couldn't you just accept an apology and move on? Would it be a genuine apology, Noah, or just words spoken to appease someone they now know has power over them? He had no answer for that. Your wife needs to learn some fundamental truths about character and dignity. These aren't punishments I'm imposing. They're opportunities for growth. And if she doesn't grow, if she just resents you more, I took his hand. Then at least you'll know who she truly is before you build a life with her. Sometimes the most valuable gift we can give someone is clarity. I love her, Mom. I know you do. And if she's worthy of that love, these 6 months will prove it. As he was leaving, he hugged me tightly. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening, that I didn't stand up for you at the wedding. You're standing up now. That's what matters. The next day, Mia Turner began her education, and I began to hope that my son had chosen better than I'd feared. The first day of Mia's new life began at 4:45 a.m. when the alarm in her studio apartment jolted her awake. For a moment, she lay confused in the strange bed, reaching instinctively for the luxurious sheets and down pillows she was accustomed to. Instead, her hands found scratchy cotton and a thin mattress. Reality crashed over her as she remembered where she was, the small, sparsely furnished apartment in Janet's building, her new home for the next 6 months. The night before, Noah had helped her move in, carrying the 2 suitcases containing the only possessions she was allowed to bring: basic clothes, toiletries, a few photographs, no designer labels, no jewelry except her wedding ring, no credit cards or electronics besides a simple flip phone Janet had provided. I'll visit every day, Noah had promised, holding her tightly before leaving. We'll get through this together. But as Mia stumbled to the tiny bathroom with its dripping faucet and cracked mirror, she felt utterly alone. This wasn't the life she had signed up for when she married Noah White. This was punishment, plain and simple. By 5:30 a.m., she was dressed in the plain clothes she'd been instructed to wear: jeans, a simple t-shirt, sturdy shoes, and walking the 6 blocks to Sunshine Cleaning Service. The streets were mostly empty, though she passed a few early morning workers hurrying to their jobs. None of them gave her a second glance. Without her designer clothes and perfect makeup, she was invisible. Mrs. Patterson, a stern woman in her 60s with calloused hands and sharp eyes, was waiting at the office door. You're Mia, not a question. Janet called about you, said you needed to learn some life lessons. Mia bristled at the assessment but swallowed her pride. Yes, ma'am. We start at 6:00 sharp every morning. You'll be assigned to Lucia's team. She'll show you the ropes. Mrs. Patterson handed her a blue uniform with Sunshine Cleaning embroidered on the pocket. Bathrooms through there. Change and be ready in 5 minutes. The uniform was scratchy and smelled faintly of industrial detergent. As Mia pulled it on, staring at her reflection in the employee bathroom mirror, she barely recognized herself. The Mia Turner who had confidently sailed through society events was gone, replaced by, what a cleaning lady, a charity case. Lucia turned out to be a middle-aged Latina woman with a no-nonsense attitude and surprising strength for her small frame. She drove the company van, with Mia and 2 other women, Rosa and Deepa, sitting silently in the back, surrounded by buckets, mops, vacuum cleaners, and cleaning supplies. Their first stop was a large office building downtown. As luck would have it, Meridian Financial, where Mia's father worked, where Janet apparently owned controlling interest. 12th floor today, Lucia announced, unloading equipment from the van. Turner, you take bathrooms with Rosa. She'll show you how it's done. Bathrooms, of course. The universe wasn't subtle with its lessons. Rosa, a quiet woman probably in her 50s, handed Mia rubber gloves and a caddy of cleaning supplies. First time, she asked, noting Mia's hesitation. Is it that obvious? Rosa smiled kindly. Everyone has a first day. You'll learn. For the next 2 hours, Mia scrubbed toilets, wiped mirrors, mopped floors, and refilled soap dispensers. Her back ached. Her hands, despite the gloves, were red and raw. The smell of industrial cleaners made her eyes water. Why do you do this? She asked Rosa during a brief water break. It's so hard. Rosa looked at her curiously. To feed my children. To pay rent. To live. She shrugged. Why do you do it? Mia had no answer that wouldn't sound ridiculous. Because my mother-in-law is blackmailing me. Because my family's fortune is built on lies. Because I wrote charity case on a name tag and unleashed a financial hurricane. I'm learning. She finally said. Rosa nodded. That's a good reason too. By the end of the first day, Mia's body ached in places she didn't know could ache. Her hands were chapped. Her hair smelled of disinfectant. When Noah picked her up at 5:00 p.m., she collapsed into the passenger seat of his car, too exhausted to speak. That bad? He asked gently. Tears welled in her eyes. I can't do this. Noah, 6 months of this will kill me. You're stronger than you think, Mia. Easy for you to say. You're not the one scrubbing toilets. He drove in silence for a moment. Mom called. She wants to have dinner with us tomorrow. Mia stiffened. Why? So she can gloat about her grand social experiment. I don't think that's it. I think she wants to explain some things. About herself. About why she's doing this. I know why she's doing this. Revenge. Noah shook his head. You don't know my mother at all. Mia, this isn't about revenge. Then what is it about? Tomorrow? Ask her yourself. The next evening, after another grueling day at Sunshine Cleaning, Mia and Noah arrived at Janet's apartment. Mia had expected to find Janet's true living quarters. Surely the billionaire owner of 17 corporations didn't actually live in this modest building. But the apartment was exactly as she remembered it from previous visits, small, simply furnished. Nothing luxurious or ostentatious. Janet opened the door wearing an apron, the smell of homemade lasagna wafting from behind her. Right on time? Dinner's almost ready. Mia stepped inside, acutely aware of her appearance. She hadn't had time to shower after work. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her hands were red and chapped despite the gloves. She felt dirty and small next to Janet's composed elegance. Sit, both of you. Janet gestured to the small dining table, already set with simple plates and silverware. Nothing fancy, but everything clean and precisely arranged. Noah, would you pour the water? It was so normal. No household staff, no expensive china. Just a mother cooking dinner for her son and daughter-in-law. How was your first day at Sunshine? Janet asked as she served the lasagna. Mia stared at her, trying to detect mockery or satisfaction, but found only polite interest. Humiliating, she answered honestly. Exhausting, painful, Janet nodded. My first day was too. Mrs. Patterson assigned me to bathrooms as well. I think it's her standard test for new employees. You really worked there as a cleaner. For 2 years after Marcus died, I needed to understand what real work felt like. But you had billions. You didn't need to work at all. Janet smiled slightly. Need comes in many forms. Mia, financial need is only one kind. They ate in silence for a few moments, the lasagna surprisingly delicious. Why are you doing this to me? Mia finally asked, the question that had been burning inside her since their meeting at Marlowe's. Is humiliating me really worth all this trouble? Janet set down her fork. This isn't about humiliation. Mia, if that were my goal, I could have accomplished it much more efficiently. She reached into a drawer beside the table and pulled out a folder. I want to show you something. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of Janet and a handsome man Mia assumed was Marcus White, but they weren't the polished portraits of wealthy socialites she had expected. These showed a young couple in modest surroundings cooking in a tiny kitchen, painting walls in what looked like a small apartment, sitting on the floor surrounded by papers and ledgers. Marcus and I started with nothing, Janet explained. He was a junior accountant with big dreams. I was a teacher. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment and counted every penny. For the first 5 years of our marriage, we ate boxed macaroni and cheese 3 nights a week because it was all we could afford. She pointed to another photo, Marcus in a cheap suit, Janet in a simple dress, both beaming in front of a small storefront with White Financial Services painted on the window. His first office. We painted it ourselves to save money. I answered phones and kept the books while teaching full-time. 60, sometimes 70-hour weeks for both of us. Mia studied the photos, trying to reconcile this history with the billions Janet now controlled. Success didn't come quickly or easily, Janet continued. It took years of sacrifice, of setbacks and near failures. We lost everything twice before finally breaking through. And when success did come, we made a pact never to forget where we came from, never to become the kind of people who measured others by their bank accounts rather than their character. She turned to another photo, an older Marcus in an expensive suit, Janet in a simple dress, surrounded by employees in what was clearly a major corporate headquarters. By the time Marcus died, White Investments had become one of the most successful financial firms on the East Coast. We had more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. But we still lived in the same house we'd bought 30 years earlier. We still ate at Marlowe's every Sunday. We still remembered what it felt like to have nothing but each other. But why hide it? Mia asked. Why pretend to be poor when meeting Noah's fiancé? Janet's eyes met hers directly. I wasn't pretending anything. This apartment, these clothes, this simple life, this is who I am. Mia, the money doesn't change that. I wanted to know if you could see beyond appearances, if you could respect an ordinary woman with no obvious power or wealth. The implication hung in the air between them, and you couldn't. What about the conditions? Mia asked, her voice smaller now. Working at Sunshine, volunteering at the shelter, living in that apartment. Is that really necessary? I believe it is. Janet's voice was gentle but firm. You've lived a life of privilege. Mia, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But privilege without perspective becomes entitlement. And entitlement corrupts character. So this is some kind of character-building exercise. It's an education, in empathy, in humility, in the dignity of work and the value of treating all people with respect, regardless of their apparent status or wealth. Noah, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke. Mom taught me the same lessons growing up. Mia, I never knew we were wealthy until I was 18. I worked summer jobs. I took out student loans for college, which Mom paid off only after I graduated. You're both crazy, Mia said, but without the heat she'd felt earlier. Normal rich people just enjoy their money and end up with children who write charity case on their mother-in-law's name tag, Janet asked quietly. The truth of it struck Mia like a physical blow. She looked down at her raw, red hands, cleaner's hands now, and felt shame wash over her. I was cruel to you, she admitted. Not just the name tag, from the beginning. I judged you for your apartment, your clothes, what I thought was your social status. I was awful. Yes, you were, Janet agreed without rancor. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge now? Mia looked up, meeting Janet's eyes. Complete your conditions. Learn whatever it is you think I need to learn. Not for me, Mia, for yourself, for Noah, for the person you might become if you allow yourself to grow beyond the limitations of privilege." As they finished dinner, Mia felt something shift inside her, a small crack in the foundation of certainty she'd built her life upon. The world she'd known, with its clear hierarchies and social stratifications, suddenly seemed less solid. "Tomorrow's your first day at the shelter," Janet reminded her as they prepared to leave. "It won't be easy. These are people society has cast aside, much as you cast me aside when you thought I had no value to offer." "I'll be there," Mia promised, and was surprised to find she meant it. Later that night, in her small studio apartment, Mia sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, hair pulled back, face free of makeup, eyes tired but somehow clearer than before. "6 months," she whispered to her reflection. "Let's see who you become." The homeless shelter on Willow Street was housed in a former elementary school, a sprawling brick building with high windows and worn linoleum floors. When Mia arrived at 7:00 a.m. Saturday morning, a line of people already stretched around the block, waiting for the doors to open at 8:00. "First-time volunteer?" asked a cheerful woman in her 60s, greeting Mia at the staff entrance. Her name tag read Dorothy. "Yes, I'm Mia. Janet White sent me." Dorothy's eyebrows rose. "Janet, well, that's interesting. She's one of our biggest supporters. You know, the White Foundation funds most of our operations, though she never wants recognition for it." Another surprise. Another piece of the puzzle that was Janet White. "She said I should work wherever I'm needed most," Mia explained. Dorothy looked her over appraisingly. "Kitchen today. I think breakfast service starts at 8 sharp. The kitchen was a flurry of activity volunteers chopping vegetables, stirring massive pots of oatmeal, setting up serving stations. No one paid particular attention to Mia as Dorothy handed her an apron and assigned her to egg duty. 400 scrambled eggs. Coming up," Dorothy said cheerfully. "James will show you how we do it." James turned out to be a tall black man in his 40s with kind eyes and a quiet demeanor. "First time?" he asked as he showed Mia how to crack eggs efficiently into the industrial-sized mixing bowls. "Is it obvious?" He smiled. "The designer jeans and manicure are a bit of a tell. But don't worry. Both will be history by the end of the day." He was right. By noon, Mia's carefully manicured nails were chipped beyond repair, her jeans splattered with food stains, and her arms aching from stirring, serving, and cleaning. But something else was happening too, a curious feeling of satisfaction as she watched people receive their meals, many nodding thanks or offering quiet words of gratitude. During the brief lull between breakfast and lunch service, Mia collapsed onto a folding chair in the break room, massaging her aching shoulders. "First days are the hardest," James said, handing her a cup of coffee. "It gets easier. You've been volunteering here long." A shadow crossed his face. "I was a guest here first, 3 years ago, after I lost my job, my house, everything. The shelter gave me a place to sleep, food to eat, and eventually, a purpose." Mia stared at him, reassessing. Nothing in his demeanor suggested homelessness. He was well-spoken, confident, clearly capable. "What happened?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Life happened," he shrugged. "I was a financial analyst at Turner Holdings. Actually, when they downsized in 2021, I was among the first to go. Couldn't find work. Burned through my savings. Wife left. Spiral continued from there. Turner Holdings, her family's company. The company that had cast this man aside without a second thought. "I'm sorry," she said, the words feeling woefully inadequate. "Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me, in a way. Forced me to reassess what really matters." Before she could respond, a commotion erupted from the main hall. A child's voice, high and distressed, rose above the general murmur. "I want my book. It was right here. Someone took my book." Mia followed James to the source of the disruption. A little girl, no more than 7 or 8, was searching frantically under tables and chairs, tears streaming down her face. Maria, James said gently, kneeling beside her. What's wrong? My book is gone. The one with the princess, I left it right here. And now it's gone. The child was distraught, her small body shaking with sobs. We'll find it, James promised. This is Mia. She's going to help us look. Maria looked up at Mia through tear-filled eyes. Will you? It's the only book I have. Something cracked open in Mia's chest, a feeling she couldn't name. She knelt down to the child's level. Of course we'll find it. What does it look like? It's blue, with a silver princess on the front. My dad gave it to me before he went away. For the next 20 minutes, Mia, James, and Maria searched every corner of the shelter. They found many things: a worn teddy bear, several socks, even a set of dentures, but no blue book with a silver princess. Maria's hope was visibly fading when Mia spotted a young boy in the corner, leafing through a book that matched the description. She approached carefully. Hi there. Is that your book? The boy, maybe 5 years old, clutched it protectively. I found it. I think it might belong to Maria. She's very sad that it's missing. He scowled. I don't have any books. This one has pictures. Mia sat beside him. I understand. Books with pictures are special, but this one is special to Maria too. Her dad gave it to her. The boy considered this. My dad's gone too. I'm sorry to hear that. Mia was surprised to find she genuinely meant it. Tell you what, if you give Maria back her book, I'll bring you your very own book tomorrow, with lots of pictures. Would that be okay? He looked at her suspiciously. Promise, I promise. Reluctantly, he handed over the book. Mia returned it to Maria, whose face lit up with such joy that Mia felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. Thank you. Maria threw her arms around Mia's waist. You're my hero. Such a simple act. Such profound gratitude. Mia had spent thousands on designer handbags without feeling a fraction of the satisfaction this child's happiness gave her. Later, as the lunch service began, Maria stayed close to Mia, chattering away in a mixture of English and Spanish. Do you speak Spanish? Mia asked as she served mashed potatoes to the line of shelter guests. Maria nodded proudly. My mama teaches me. She says I must remember where we come from. That's very wise. Could you teach me some words? Maria's eyes widened with delight. You want to learn very much. And so, between serving meals and wiping tables, Mia received her first Spanish lesson from a 7-year-old homeless girl. By the end of the day, she could count to 10, say please and thank you, and ask simple questions. You'll come back next week? Maria asked as she and her mother prepared to leave the shelter. Mia looked into the child's hopeful eyes and found she couldn't imagine not returning. Yes, and I'll bring books. For you and for the little boy. Promise, promise. On the bus ride back to her apartment, another new experience. Mia had never used public transportation before. She found herself thinking about Maria, about James, about all the people she'd served that day. People she would have previously walked past without a second glance. People with stories, with dignity, with value that had nothing to do with bank accounts or social status. When she arrived at her studio apartment, Noah was waiting outside her door with a small gift bag. How was it? He asked, kissing her cheek. Exhausting, eye-opening. I can't even describe it. She unlocked the door, leading him into the tiny space. I met this little girl, Maria. She's living at the shelter with her mother. She taught me Spanish today. Noah smiled. You sound different. I feel different. She sank onto the bed, muscles aching from the day's work. Your mother is either a genius or completely insane, possibly both. She has a way of seeing through people, of understanding what they need, not what they want. And I needed to scrub toilets and serve food to homeless people. Apparently, he handed her the gift bag. This is from her, by the way. Inside, Mia found 3 children's books, beautifully illustrated stories in both English and Spanish, and a note in Janet's precise handwriting. For Maria and the little boy, the beginning of your library project, perhaps Jay. Tears sprang to Mia's eyes. How did she know? Mom has always been 3 steps ahead of everyone else. It used to drive my father crazy. Noah sat beside her, taking her hand. Are you okay with all this? Really? Mia considered the question seriously. A week ago, she would have been plotting revenge, looking for ways to escape Janet's conditions, seething with resentment. Now, I think I need this, she admitted finally. As much as I hate to admit it, your mother might be right. About me. About what I need to learn. Noah squeezed her hand. That's the first step, recognizing there might be something to learn. That night, after Noah left, Mia lay awake in her narrow bed, staring at the cracked ceiling of her studio apartment. She thought about her former life, the designer clothes, the social events, the casual cruelty toward those she considered beneath her. She thought about Janet living simply despite her billions, working as a cleaner after her husband died, quietly funding the homeless shelter without seeking recognition. She thought about Maria finding joy in a recovered book, generously sharing her language with a stranger. And for the first time, Mia Turner felt the stirrings of shame for who she had been and curiosity about who she might become. As weeks turned into months, Mia's transformation became increasingly evident not just to Janet and Noah, but to Mia herself. Her hands, once perfectly manicured, now bore calluses from honest work. Her designer wardrobe gathered dust while she lived in practical clothes suitable for cleaning and serving. Her vocabulary expanded with Spanish phrases taught by Maria, whose weekly Spanish lessons had become the highlight of Mia's Saturdays at the shelter. 3 months into her education, Mia faced her first major test when Elizabeth Turner unexpectedly appeared at the homeless shelter on a Saturday morning. Mia was in the middle of helping Maria organize a small library corner they had created together, a project inspired by Janet's gift of books. Every week, Mia brought new volumes, and the collection had grown to over 50 books, carefully arranged on shelves Noah had built and installed. Mia, Elizabeth's shocked voice cut through the cheerful chatter of the shelter. Is that really you? Mia looked up to see her mother standing in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a Chanel suit, looking as out of place as a peacock in a chicken coop. Several shelter guests stared openly at the elegant woman with her designer handbag and perfectly coiffed hair. Mom, what are you doing here? Mia rose from where she'd been sitting cross-legged on the floor with Maria. Elizabeth's gaze traveled from Mia's simple jeans and t-shirt to her bare face and practical ponytail, then to the little girl clutching Mia's hand. I had to see for myself, she said, her voice tight with emotion. Your father said you were working here, but I couldn't believe it. Mrs. Turner, Dorothy approached with a welcoming smile. I'm Dorothy, the shelter coordinator. Are you here to volunteer too? We can always use more hands. Elizabeth blinked, clearly unaccustomed to being mistaken for staff rather than a patron. No, I'm just here to see my daughter. Oh, we love your Mia, Dorothy beamed. She's become indispensable around here. Started our library program, helps with English and Spanish lessons. Even organized our new clothing donation system. Pride and confusion battled on Elizabeth's face. That's nice. Mia, could we speak privately? Mia squeezed Maria's hand. I'll be back to finish our story. Okay, why don't you practice reading the first page to show me how much you've learned? Maria nodded solemnly. I'll practice very hard, Miss Mia. Mia led her mother to the small staff break room, acutely aware of the contrast between them, Elizabeth in her $1,000 outfit, Mia in clothes that together cost less than $50. What's going on? Mia, Elizabeth demanded the moment they were alone. Your father says you're living in some tiny apartment, working as a cleaning lady, spending your weekends in this place? She gestured vaguely at their surroundings. This isn't you. Actually, Mom, I think this might be more me than the person I was before. Elizabeth stared at her daughter as if she'd grown a second head. Has Janet White brainwashed you? Is this some kind of Stockholm syndrome? Mia sighed. No, Mom. This is me learning some hard truths about myself, about our family. What truths that we raised you to be successful, to have standards, to maintain our position in society. That you raised me to judge people by their bank accounts instead of their character, to treat those I considered beneath me with contempt, to write charity case on my mother-in-law's name tag because I thought she was poor. Elizabeth flinched at the direct reference. That was unfortunate, But this punishment is extreme. It's not punishment. Mom, it's education. Mia echoed Janet's words, finding they now resonated with her own experience. I've learned more about myself in the past 3 months than in the previous 29 years. By cleaning toilets, by associating with... Elizabeth lowered her voice, glancing toward the door. Homeless people. Yes. Mia met her mother's gaze steadily. That little girl out there, Maria, she's teaching me Spanish. Her mother has 2 master's degrees but lost everything when her husband died. The man who runs our dinner service was an executive at an investment firm before the market crash. These are people. Mom. Real people with stories and dignity and value. Elizabeth's expression hardened. I see Janet has done a thorough job on you. Well, this has gone on long enough. Your father's position at Meridian has been restored. Our accounts are unfrozen. The foreclosure notice has been withdrawn. Whatever point Janet was trying to make has been made. It's time to come home. Mia shook her head slowly. I made a commitment. 6 months of work at Sunshine Cleaning. A year of volunteering here. I'm honoring that commitment. Why? Because Janet White will destroy our family again if you don't. No. Because I gave my word. And because... Mia hesitated, searching for the right words. Because I'm not finished becoming the person I want to be. Elizabeth studied her daughter's face, noting the new confidence, the quiet strength that hadn't been there before. And who is that? Exactly, someone who treats others with dignity regardless of their circumstances. Someone who values character over wealth. Someone worthy of the trust Janet has placed in me. Trust the woman is blackmailing you. Mia smiled slightly. That's what I thought at first, too. But now I understand what she's really doing. She's offering me a chance to see beyond the bubble I've lived in my entire life. To understand that true value isn't measured in dollars. Elizabeth sank into a chair, her perfectly composed facade cracking. I don't understand what's happened to you. I'm growing up. Mom. Finally. They sat in silence for a moment, the gulf between them wider than ever despite their physical proximity. Your father misses you, Elizabeth said finally. We both do. I miss you too, but I need to finish what I've started here. And then will you come back to us? Resume your life? Mia considered the question seriously. I'll come back, but not to the life I had before. I can't unsee what I've seen. Mom, I can't pretend that the way we lived, the way we judged others was right. Elizabeth's eyes welled with unexpected tears. We only wanted the best for you, to give you everything we didn't have growing up. Something in her mother's tone caught Mia's attention. What do you mean? Elizabeth dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Your father and I, we didn't come from wealth. Mia, my father was a plumber. William's family ran a small grocery store. We worked our way up, built our reputation, our social standing. This revelation stunned Mia. But you always talked about our family legacy, our place in society. Because we wanted you to belong, to never feel like an outsider the way we did. Elizabeth's perfectly maintained veneer cracked further. We were so afraid you would face the same judgment, the same exclusion we experienced. So we pushed too hard in the opposite direction. For the first time, Mia saw her mother clearly not as the imperious society matron she'd always appeared to be, but as a woman who had fought her way into acceptance and was terrified of losing it. Mom, I had no idea. Of course not. We made sure of that. Elizabeth straightened, composing herself. But none of that excuses how we treated Janet, or how we raised you to treat others. Perhaps her lessons aren't entirely misguided. This concession, small as it was, represented a seismic shift in Elizabeth Turner's worldview. Would you like to meet Maria? Mia asked gently. She's really remarkable, and she'd love to practice her English with you. Elizabeth hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. When they returned to the main hall, Maria was diligently practicing her reading, sounding out words with careful concentration. She looked up as Mia approached with Elizabeth. Miss Mia, I read the whole page. Her face shone with pride. That's wonderful, Maria. This is my mother, Mrs. Turner. Maria stood and extended her small hand with solemn dignity. Pleased to meet you. Mrs. Turner, my name is Maria Gonzalez. Elizabeth looked momentarily taken aback by the child's perfect manners, then shook the offered hand. It's lovely to meet you. Maria, I hear you're teaching my daughter Spanish. See, she is learning very fast. Would you like to learn too? A smile, genuine and unguarded, transformed Elizabeth's face. Perhaps a few words. And so Elizabeth Turner, who had never set foot in a homeless shelter before, spent the next hour sitting on the floor with her daughter and a 7-year-old girl, learning to count to 10 in Spanish and listening to Maria read from her favorite book. When it was time to leave, Elizabeth surprised Mia by hugging her tightly. I'm proud of you, she whispered. I don't understand all of this yet, but I'm trying. That's all anyone can ask. Mom? After Elizabeth left, Mia found Dorothy watching her with a knowing smile. Mothers and daughters, the older woman said. Always complicated. You have no idea. Actually, I do. Janet and I have been friends for 40 years. I was there when she married Marcus, when Noah was born, when Marcus died. I've watched her navigate her own complicated family relationships. Mia stared at her. You know Janet, really know her? Dorothy nodded. The real Janet, not the persona she shows the world. The woman who funds this shelter anonymously, who worked as a cleaning lady to understand true dignity when everyone expected her to retire to a mansion in Florida. Why is she doing all this? The conditions, the lessons. It's so elaborate. Because she sees something in you worth salvaging. Dorothy patted Mia's hand. Janet doesn't waste time on people without potential. If she's investing this much effort in you, she believes you can become someone extraordinary. That night, lying in her small studio apartment, Mia turned Dorothy's words over in her mind. Not punishment, but investment. Not revenge, but belief. The realization brought tears to her eyes, tears of shame for who she had been, and tears of determination for who she might become. Noah found her that way when he came to bring dinner curled on her bed, crying quietly. What's wrong? He asked, alarmed. Did something happen at the shelter? She sat up, wiping her eyes. My mother came to see me today. Oh no. Was it terrible? Actually, it was illuminating. She told me things about her and Dad I never knew, about where they came from. And then she sat on the floor and learned Spanish from Maria. Noah looked stunned. Elizabeth Turner sat on the floor of a homeless shelter. The world is full of surprises. Mia managed a watery smile. I also learned that your mother and Dorothy have been friends for 40 years. Mom has friends everywhere, usually in places you'd least expect. Mia nodded. Dorothy said something that really hit me. She said your mother is investing in me because she sees potential, that she believes I can become someone extraordinary. Noah sat beside her, taking her hand. Mom's usually right about people. She saw something in you that I saw too. Beneath all the society manners and designer clothes, a spark of something real and valuable. I was awful to her. Noah. To everyone I thought was beneath me. How could she see anything worth saving? Because that's who she is. She looks past surfaces to what's underneath. She did it with my father, too, saw the brilliant businessman beneath the struggling junior accountant when no one else would give him the time of day. Mia leaned against Noah's shoulder, drawing comfort from his presence. I don't know if I can live up to her expectations. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to grow. He kissed the top of her head. And from where I'm standing, you're already growing in remarkable ways. 6 months to the day after Mia Turner began working at Sunshine Cleaning Service, Janet White arrived at Meridian Financial to meet her daughter-in-law as she completed her final shift. The marble lobby gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, executives in expensive suits striding purposefully across its polished surface. Mia was on her hands and knees, scrubbing a stubborn stain near the reception desk. Her blue uniform faded from months of wear and washing. She didn't notice Janet's approach until a shadow fell across the floor she was cleaning. Mrs. White? She scrambled to her feet, wiping her hands on her uniform. I didn't expect you. Janet smiled. I thought we might mark the occasion together. 6 months is a significant milestone. Mia glanced at her watch. I have 20 more minutes on my shift. I'm happy to wait. As Mia returned to her work, Janet observed the changes in her daughter-in-law. The physical transformation was obvious. The manicured nails replaced by practical, work-roughened hands, the designer clothes exchanged for a simple uniform, the perfect makeup abandoned in favor of a fresh-faced practicality. But the more profound changes were in her demeanor. The haughty arrogance had vanished, replaced by a quiet confidence. The dismissive attitude toward service workers had transformed into respect and camaraderie. Mia chatted easily with her co-workers, asked after their families, shared jokes as they completed their tasks. When the shift ended, Mia changed out of her uniform and met Janet in the lobby. "Where to?" she asked. "I thought we might go to Marlowe's, for old time's sake." The diner was busy with the late afternoon crowd, but Dolores led them to the same booth where they'd had their confrontation 6 months earlier. The symmetry wasn't lost on either woman. "So," Janet said after they'd ordered coffee, "how does it feel your last day at Sunshine?" Mia considered the question carefully. "Bittersweet, actually. I've learned so much there. Made friends I never expected to make. Mrs. Patterson speaks highly of you. Says you have a natural talent for organization and leadership. She offered me a supervisor position. Did you know that?" Mia smiled at Janet's surprise. "I told her I needed to honor my commitment to the shelter, but I might consider part-time work after that." Janet raised an eyebrow. "A Turner working as a cleaning supervisor by choice." "Not a Turner, a White." Mia twisted her wedding ring. "And yes, by choice. There's dignity in the work, as you well know." "Indeed I do." Janet stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "And the shelter, how is young Maria progressing with her reading?" "Remarkably well. We've expanded the library to over 100 books now. Started a regular reading program for the children. Maria helps teach the younger ones." "And your Spanish lessons?" "Estoy aprendiendo rápidamente," Mia replied with a smile. "Maria says my accent is terrible, but my vocabulary is growing." Janet nodded approvingly. "You've embraced these challenges more fully than I anticipated." They stopped feeling like challenges somewhere along the way. Started feeling like opportunities. Mia met Janet's gaze directly. "You were right, about what I needed to learn, about who I could become. I had faith in your potential. Even when you showed me your worst self, I glimpsed something beneath worth cultivating." They sat in companionable silence for a moment. The antagonism that had marked their previous meeting in this same booth, now replaced by something approaching mutual respect. "I have something for you," Janet said, reaching into her purse. She handed Mia an envelope. Inside was a key and an address. "What's this?" "The key to your new home. Noah helped choose it, a modest 3-bedroom house not far from the shelter. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable. A place to build a life based on values rather than appearances." Tears welled in Mia's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "There's more." Janet handed her a second envelope. "Your position at the Turner Foundation has been approved by the board. Director of Community Outreach, focusing on homeless services and education initiatives. A real job with real responsibilities, not a courtesy title. But I don't have experience in, don't use 6 months at a cleaning service, learning the dignity of labor. 6 months at a homeless shelter, developing programs and building relationships with the community. I'd say that's more valuable experience than any Ivy League degree." Mia opened the second envelope with trembling hands, reading the official offer letter. The salary was modest but fair enough to live comfortably but not extravagantly. "I don't deserve this. It's not about deserving, Mia. It's about becoming. You've become someone who can make a real difference in people's lives. Someone who understands both worlds, privilege and struggle. That perspective is invaluable. What about my parents? Their financial situation?" "Already resolved, as promised. Your father's promotion is permanent. The family home is secure. Their social standing has been restored, though I think they now view it differently than before." Mia nodded. "Mom volunteers at the shelter twice a month now. Dad's established a hiring program at Meridian for shelter residents with financial backgrounds. They're changing, too. Growth can be contagious," Janet observed with satisfaction. "I have something for you as well." Mia reached into her bag and pulled out a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. Janet unwrapped it carefully to reveal a name tag, but instead of Janet White, the charity case, this one read Janet White, the teacher. I had it made to replace the one from the wedding. Mia's voice caught. I'm so sorry for who I was that day, for how I treated you, for everything. Janet traced the words with her finger. This is a gift I will treasure. Mia, not just the tag itself, but the growth it represents. I don't think I can ever fully repay you for the lessons you've taught me. Repayment isn't necessary. Just live the lessons. Teach them to others, especially to your children. When the time comes, Mia's eyes widened. How did you know? Janet smiled. Know what? That I'm pregnant. Noah and I just found out yesterday. We haven't told anyone yet. Janet's smile broadened. I didn't know, but I'm delighted. A grandchild is the greatest gift you could give me. Tears spilled down Mia's cheeks. I promise you, Janet, this child will learn the value of respect, of dignity, of seeing people for who they are rather than what they own. I will make sure of it. I believe you will. Janet reached across the table to clasp Mia's hand. The true measure of these past 6 months isn't in how well you've scrubbed floors or served meals. It's in who you've become in the process, and who your child will become because of it. That Sunday, the White and Turner families gathered for dinner at Janet's apartment, the same modest space where the journey had begun. William and Elizabeth, Noah and Mia, and Janet, all seated around a table that barely accommodated them. The conversation flowed easily, without the strain and pretense that had marked their earlier interactions. William discussed his new hiring initiative at Meridian. Elizabeth shared stories from her volunteer work at the shelter. Mia talked about her plans for the Turner Foundation's outreach programs. As Janet served a simple but delicious apple pie for dessert, William raised his glass. A toast, he said, to Janet White, who taught us all what true wealth looks like. To second chances, Elizabeth added. To family, Noah said, squeezing Mia's hand. Mia looked around the table at these people who had journeyed so far together, from contempt to understanding, from judgment to acceptance, from pretense to authenticity. To charity, she said softly, meeting Janet's eyes across the table. The real kind. Later that evening, as the Turners prepared to leave, Mia embraced Janet warmly. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me when I gave you every reason to. The greatest charity we can offer, Janet replied, is the belief that people can change, that they can become better than they were. You've proven that belief well-founded. As Noah and Mia walked to their car, hand in hand under the stars, Mia looked back at the modest apartment building where her mother-in-law billionaire, businesswoman, teacher had chosen to make her home. Your mother is extraordinary, she said. Noah smiled. She always says that extraordinary isn't about what you have, it's about what you give. I want our child to know that, Mia said, placing a hand on her still flat stomach. To understand value the way she does. Our child will have the best of both worlds, Noah assured her. Your determination and my mother's wisdom. And hopefully none of my former snobbery, Mia added with a rueful smile. That person is gone, Noah said gently. Replaced by someone I'm even more proud to call my wife. 6 months earlier, Mia Turner had written charity case on her mother-in-law's name tag, never imagining the journey those 2 words would set in motion. A journey from arrogance to humility, from judgment to understanding, from superficial wealth to genuine abundance. As she and Noah drove away from Janet's apartment, Mia silently renewed her commitment to the lessons she'd learned, to seeing people for who they were, not what they owned, to valuing character above status, to offering others the same chance at transformation that Janet had offered her. The greatest charity, after all, isn't giving money. It's giving people the opportunity to discover their own worth, a lesson Mia Turner White would never forget. If you've enjoyed my story, please subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Have you ever received a lesson in humility that changed your life or found value in unexpected places? I'd love to hear your experiences.